Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and to another episode of the Sydney Railroad build. If you were watching last time, you'll see me build a DCC control cabinet and also start on the first of the bi-level frames for both the mezzanine staging yard and the upper deck above it. For this installment, I'm going to continue where I left off and continue that bi-level framing most of the length of the room. So without further ado, let's just head out to the workshop and build those frames. Anyway, I have a little time left this afternoon, so I'm going to start working on the next of the mezzanine and upper level frames to go in this area where the foam is now. It will be a full 7-foot length, and it's fairly straightforward. The plywood for the staging yard will just be an extension, will just be a 7-foot extension of that piece, and the ramp will be another 5-inch wide strip at a 2% grade climbing up behind it. I've got to start by cutting down 9 of the special joists. When I specified them, I made them an inch too tall at the top because I wasn't thinking. Fortunately, it's an easy matter to cut them down. I'm glad I didn't make them too small. And I don't think it really matters that the holes are much nearer the top of the frame than I intended. Anyway, let me just turn the camera off and get back to work, and I will be right back. Well, here is the next frame ready to go in. I kept the same design as the last one. The only difference is that I have, for the time being, omitted most of these little verticals at the back. I figure by leaving most of them out for the time being, it will probably be easier to lay the track. Here are all the pieces that I need. Here's the 6 missing verticals, the 2 rear legs and the 2 front legs. Note that in both cases the 2 pairs of legs are different. At the top end of the front legs, one of them has a bigger cutout than the other, and the 2 short legs at the back, one of them is wider than the other. We can go over to the other frame that I've already finished. You can see the reason for that. I put a slightly wider one where it supports 2 frames and the narrower one in the middle. Even though there's no reason for this one to be narrower, I think it will help to isolate them and tell which one is which when I come to install the railroad again. Then the ones in the front, the leg that supports 2 frames has a bigger step, and the one that supports only one has a smaller step. Anyway, I'm just going to toss this next frame in place, get it installed, and I'll be right back. To help with the installation of this frame, I have clamped 2 blocks of wood underneath the top member of the preceding frame. That way I can rest it on those, they will take the full weight of it, and it eliminates the risk of the frame falling and destroying the track underneath it. So let me lift it into place and I will be right back. Well, there is that frame permanently installed. All 4 legs are properly located, screwed at both ends. I haven't bolted it to the previous frame yet. It's still held in place with a couple of clamps. The next job is to get the plywood in for the staging yard and the ramp. But that will be a task for another day. It is dark outside. It is time to go in. In fact, it's almost time to go to bed. It's after 10 o'clock. I had a late start today, so I came back out for a couple of hours this evening just to catch up. So stay tuned and I will check in with you again tomorrow. Well, here is one more section built and ready to install. This one is a little bit shorter than the previous one. The reason being that if I had broken it at 7 feet as I wanted to, the joint would have been in the middle of a massive point work. So rather than cut through all the turnouts and make it a lot more complicated, I've just gone with a shorter section, and then the other one will cantilever about 1 foot beyond the next leg and support the end of this one. Other than that, it's the same as the previous one. Because it's a little bit smaller, it's also a little bit lighter, so it should be even easier to install. It also only gets 2 additional legs instead of 4. So let me just install this quickly and I will be right back. Well, that section is now properly installed. Before I can build the next frame, I've got to go inside and check my joist spacing to make sure that I miss all the switch machines. But before I do that, I want to get the plywood in for the mezzanine staging on these two frames. Because by the time I get to the end of this one, the ramp is going to be fairly well at the top of this opening. And very soon I'm going to have to go into the special joists. And also the decking for the staging yard will extend underneath the ramp at that point. So let's get some plywood in. But before I do that, I'm going to put the bolts in because they're a lot easier to reach now than they will be after the plywood is done. So I need 3 at the top and 2 at the bottom on each section. So let me prep 10 bolts and I will be right back. Well, there is the flat sub roadbed for the staging yard, the easy part. Next I've got to do the ramps. I've already cut the 5-inch wide strips. Well, I've cut them to width, I haven't cut them to length yet. So I've got to get those, cut the length, put them in place, and then cut a whole bunch of risers. So let me get on with that, and I will be right back. Well, there is the ramp installed. The most awkward part was getting the drill into position in and around all the woodwork and the clamps and everything. But even that wasn't too onerous once I got into a rhythm. This is as far as it goes with the straight joists. Well, there'll be one more straight joist matching this one on the next section, after which I will go to the special ones. You'll see those when I build the next frame. I need about a 1/4-inch notch out of here because there isn't quite enough clearance for the double stacks. And that was to be expected. I'd already worked out that I get to about here, about a foot short of that joint, when I run out of clearance. So that tells me that my grade is exactly right. Anyway, I'm going to go in now, figure out exactly where the joists need to go in the next frame, because it's only about 2:30. I've got plenty of time to build that one today. So let me do that and I'll be right back. Don't go away. Well, here is the next frame assembled. As you can see, we have special joists here that have the drop section in to support the ramp. It's just the first one that's a plain one to match up with the previous frame. I've still got to build the legs, so let me do that and then I can install this. Don't go away. Well, there is that section installed. If we look here, we can see where the 2 cantilevers join in the middle. It's only about a 1-foot cantilever there, and then that one will rest on the end of it. And there's plenty of stiffness in this top member to give all the strength it needs. The front, I still need to add a lot more framing because we've got the start of the harbour basin, which is why we've got the cutouts there, and it's still going to be cut out even more. And then there'll be additional structural framing to make up for that. This diagonal piece has to stay on for now because this end of the frame wanted to sit about 1/8 of an inch too far forward, I think it was. It might have been backwards, I can't remember. But anyway, that is in exactly the right place. And once I have the plywood in for the staging yard, that will hold it perfectly square. And then the diagonal bracing can come out, allow me to get access for the additional framing up there. But that will be a task for tomorrow. It is time to go in, feed Zeus. So stay tuned, and I'll see you tomorrow. Well, I suppose today is a bit of a milestone, because it was exactly 60 years ago that I came into this world. But with that aside, today is a normal day as far as work is concerned. First thing I did was to install the plywood for the staging yard. I've also put the bolts in. And now with the rigidity of this plywood in place, I can take out that diagonal brace and it shouldn't move. And then once I've done that, I can see about what I need in the way of special framing for the harbour basin. So let me work on that and I will be right back. Well, here is the cutout for the harbour basin, or the start of it anyway. As you can see, I've got doublers where I've cut the framing down to only 1.5 inches high. This one also has a trebler as well because they got the leg in the wrong place. I wanted to get it above this one while not overspanning the plywood on this gap here. So I had to move it off where the joist was. And the next step is to get the plywood in for the harbour basin, which will be structural and will effectively increase the framing to 2 inches deep. Let me get that done and I'll be right back. Well, the harbour surface has now been installed. It's firmly glued and screwed everywhere, so it is now structural. The next task is to cut a hole through these joists for the ramp up to the main level. I've already marked where the first one has to be cut. The trick here is to put the level on the existing grade, use it as a straight edge, slide it up against that, and then with a piece of 1/2 inch plywood underneath it, draw a line. And as long as I am below that line, I will then have room to shim it up and make it right. So let me get on with this and I will be right back. Well, that is all the joists cut out, at least the bottoms of the holes are cut. I'm not going to do the top just yet. The easy way of doing that will be to wait until the plywood strip is in place and then just use a 3.5 inch wide scrap of plywood to draw around. I'm fairly confident that the holes are low enough. I will probably need some small shims, but I think it should be fairly easy to get the plywood in there from now. So let me get back to work and I'll check in with you again later. Well, there is the ramp installed, and I have also marked where I've got to cut all the joists. A little bit there. That one misses because it's the step up. Small amount there, and then gradually increasing each one until I have about 3/4 of an inch to cut off that one. So let me do that quickly and I will be right back. Well, with those holes opened out all the way through, this frame is now done, and I can start working out what the differences need to be for the next one. The next frame is going to be a full 7-footer, but the back rail, instead of being at the top, I think I'm going to put it on the lower tabs, because by the time I get to the other end, there's going to be very little of the top left. So let me get the next frame worked out, and I'll be right back out after lunch. Don't go away. Well, I got off to a bit of a slow start with the next frame because I realized that I had insufficient clearance here. It was calculated correctly, but then I put a 3/8 inch spacer in there because I had grade issues at the other end. So now that was too low. And I did work out that the double stacks would just about clear it, but only by the smallest margin, and it was too close for comfort. So I cut those off with the multi-saw, and I modified these on the table saw before I assembled the frame, which made it a lot simpler, a lot easier, and a lot neater. Anyway, I'm not going to get to install that frame today. My back is killing me. I'm going to go in, sit down. I might come out here again after dinner, or I might not. Either way, I will check in with you again later. Well, there is the ramp in place for this section. You'll notice that I have the rear stringer at the lower level instead of the higher level. And at this point, the top fork just gets too small to be useful, so I just cut them off completely. Anyway, it's time to go in for lunch now. When I come back out, I'm going to work on the harbour basin in front. So stay tuned and I will be right back. Well, there is the next 7 feet of harbour basin installed, which means that this frame is now finished. And I really can't go any further at the moment because I don't have any more of these special joists. Well, I've got 2 more of each kind, but not enough to finish the next frame. So now that I have got the ramp in all the way up the back, I can design the next set of joists that will take me from here to the end of the room. and I'm thinking that is probably about 16 feet or so. So about a third. I've done 2/3. Anyway, I'm going to go in now, design those frames, and call the wood shop where I get them cut. See when he can do them for me. Anyway, this is probably as good a place as any to break the video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Well, that's all for this week's video. I hope you enjoyed the show and found it useful or interesting or both, and I hope to see you back next week. So until then, thanks for watching and bye for now.